Welcome to Sabka Budget, the campus special. This is a special show, a conglomeration of the vision of the experienced and the energy of the youngsters. While I remember Prime Minister Narendra Modi talking about the power of the youngsters, we all know India is one country whose the majority population is youngsters who have the ability, capability and power to actually frame the economic structure of the country. Well, I have that chunk of the population here in the Faculty of Management Studies in the New Delhi. I'll be introducing them, but in this special show, let me first take the privilege to introduce my panelists. There are 5 people, and on my extreme left, we have Mr. R.M. Malla, the founder of the chairman of the IDBI Bank, and also the current chairman of the Spera Rating Agency. Thank you very much, sir, for giving your time. And on his left, we have Dr. Monica Sinha, Professor in Management of this own Faculty of Management Studies, New Delhi. On her left, we have Dr. Jatinder Singh, Senior Secretary, Education, Skill Development and CSR of the PhD Chambers. On his left, we have Dr. Simrat Kaur, Professor in Economics from the Faculty of Management Studies. And on her left at the extreme end, there we have Mr. Senthil Kumar Ramraj, the Chief Executive Officer of the Exserve Solutions Limited. Thank you all for giving your time. And the most important part of the show are my people here, the youngsters over here, who would be expressing their opinions on those crucial aspects which would actually frame the complete economic structure of the country on the backdrop of the Union Budget 2016-17 to be presented by the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley. Well, before I begin the show and then go across the guests to actually ask and talk about the aspects that would be crucial, let us actually listen to what exactly the students have to say about the upcoming budget. So before I go across and ask some questions to the panelists, let us first actually take about the opinion. What exactly these youngsters over here sitting in the FMS New Delhi thinking about their opinion, what they expect. We have certain students who would be giving their opinions. What are you expecting of the upcoming budget?
Good afternoon, panel members. I'm Ganesh from first year. So my expectation is that the government would do something about the education sector, which is global, below globally average, and government would do about the modernization of railway and the ease of doing of business in India. So the budget should revolve around all of these things.
Okay, so those are expectations about the people. Now in the international crude oil prices, there is low inflation, low growth inflation environment, and also the slowdown in the Chinese economy, which is impacting across the globe. But on the other side, to the panelists over here, Mr. Malla, I'll be straight away beginning with you. Now we are talking about the slowdown in the global economy. We have these international agencies giving positive reviews of the Indian economy. They say that Indian economy will be the driver of the global economy, and then there is a brighter spot. What exactly would be your expectations from the upcoming budget? How exactly you think the budget is going to be on the backdrop of all those situations what I just mentioned?
Thank you very much. First of all, I'm grateful to Doordarshan for bringing me back to my alma mater. I used to study in this college 40 years back, so it's a great pleasure. Thank you very much, Doordarshan. India has, as you said right in the beginning, the great demographic advantage.
Absolutely.
Any country, if it has to develop, you see, in businesses, 2 things are very important. One is capital, another is entrepreneurship. In India, we have about 7 crore enterprises. I'm counting all enterprises.
True.
But there are countries in Europe where every 10th person is an entrepreneur. So just imagine if India has been having great entrepreneurs. So if we have about 15 crore enterprises coming up in, let's say, next 5 to 7 years, and these youngsters can do it, India will be a changed country.
True.
We are still growing at a rapid pace, but that's not sufficient. In fact, we should look forward for 10%. But what is required, though foreign flow of funds is coming, but still there are certain issues which are very important. For example, GST, which I know won't be settled by the budget, but what is more important is fiscal consolidation. That's a very important figure. And certain other ease of doing businesses,
right,
which I'm very confident the current government is keeping all this in view and has initiated Startup India, Stand Up India, Swachh Bharat. These are great things, and once they get implemented, India will be a changed country and will be having huge benefits of all this.
Well, Mr. Malla, you've mentioned crucial aspects, what exactly the budget should be focusing upon. Well, most important aspects which you mentioned are like the policies we talk about Make in India, Startup India, and employment, entrepreneurship, pretty much related to the youngsters as well. And the other important aspect you mentioned is fiscal consolidation. Let me go to Dr. Simrat Kaur. You are the professor in economics. We talk about fiscal consolidation. There is huge debate going on that. My straight question to you is, what exactly should be the actions of the government? Should they have to be rigid? Should they have to ease the fiscal policy?
The entire thing about the union budget boils down ultimately to the revenues that you have collected and the expenses that you incur, whether it's on the revenue account or whether it's on the capital account. And that it's not a magic, it's a simple equation, and one has to meet the targets under the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. Under the midterm, the roadmap, we have to bring down the fiscal deficit from 3.9 to 3.5% and finally to 3%. And also at the same time, our revenue deficits have to come down to zero, which basically means we are not going to borrow for meeting our current expenses, and we have to meet our all current expenses from the revenues that have been generated. There are pros and cons to both fiscal consolidation, meeting the targets, and also overgoing and not meeting the fiscal targets. So that is where the entire debate comes in, and a simple question probably will not be the right path that one could take, because we do have economists favoring an expansion in the fiscal policy, and at the same time the monetary authorities are looking for a very heavily targeted fiscal consolidation. My own opinion as of now would be, especially when the economy is doing well, we should not have a pro-cyclical fiscal deficit. In other words, when we are doing better and much better than the rest of the world, this is the right time for us to have a fiscal space, maintain our targets in the short term, so that ultimately we are moving towards the targets in the long term. And this also simultaneously gives a leverage to the banking authorities to cut down their bank rates.
True.
And so that the growth momentum can be picked up from the monetary side rather than from the fiscal side.
Right, absolutely. I'll be coming back on that fiscal consolidation part as well. Dr. Jatinder, let's talk about the skill development part. As Mr. Malla was also mentioning, skill development is pretty much crucial. Indeed, when we link it to the Make in India, when we link it to the Digital India, we talk about Startup India, we talk about entrepreneurship. Youngsters will be loving about what exactly would you be expecting from the skill development point of view on the backdrop of union budget.
So the point of concern is this year I think most of the union emphasis should be on the skill development budget, and we know that if you see some of the slew of the measures that has been recently announced by the government of India, all those things, even like smart cities, like when we're talking of smart cities and when we are talking of the secondary service in smart cities, it will be only skilled manpower who will be able to actually do the work in smart cities. From where these laborers will come, from where workforce will come. And the point of concern is that since we have seen that, we have a very, very steady economic path. To reach, $1 trillion of our GDP, it took us around 60 years. We became, $2 trillion of your $2 trillion of economy in 7 years, and by 2019 it will be $3 trillion. So the point of concern is that this can only happen, or this can only leapfrog if we are able to unleash the demographic potential of our youth. And right now we have youth in our front, and if the focus is totally on entrepreneurship, wherein the students or whenever they come out of their colleges, they become job providers rather than job seekers. I think that will be the real momentum when all these slew of measures like Make in India, Digital India, Startup India will actually see the light of the day.
Right, Mr. Santharaj, we talk about Skill India, we're talking about the employment. Now, services is the most important space. We in India, in fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also mentions about it, that we are actually producing those software engineers from the services sector who are actually dictating terms across the globe. A great aspect. From the services point of view, recently, a few days ago, PMI is also really pretty much at higher levels. How are you looking at this space from the budget point of view?
This is the most exciting space. Service sector, if you have to see, with the current dollar value, we are at around 57% of the entire GDP, which is absolutely the thing to look at right now. And we are growing at we are one of the economy which is growing really, really fast in the service sector. We are growing at 9%, which is right behind China, which is growing at around 10.5%, and distant third is Russia, which is about 5%. So there's a huge opportunity that's lying there.
Absolutely.
Our economy, the size of service sector right now is about, say, close to about $800 billion. And what we can look at there and what we can expect there is huge. I mean, when you go to US, when you go and meet our clients there, trust me, there's so much of work that they want us to do for them. And for IT sector, I mean, specifically talking about IT sector, hotel, tourism, there's so much of an opportunity that's lying there. I mean, and the entire world, and I mean it, the entire world look up to us when it comes to services, when it comes to specifically IT services, ITA services. The entire world look up to us. They know that one of the finest minds are in this country, and they want to give as much work as we can do. Yes, we have to do some of the things right, which is of making sure that we are able to skill our employees. I mean, our employees little more qualitatively, which is missing a little bit in India, but we are not far off. Yes, we are getting there, and I think it's going to be great here.
Well, in fact, you're talking about the finest minds. The finest minds are sitting here as our people over here participating here. Dr. Monica, most important aspect, we talk about budget, we talk about taxation, we talk about GST. How are you looking at that space from the upcoming budget to be presented by the Finance Minister, Jaitley?
As far as the taxation architecture is concerned, I believe the budget should focus on 4 major aspects. One is enhancing the tax collection. Second would be rationalizing the taxation provisions. Third would be minimizing the litigation arising out of tax laws. And fourth would be simplifying the tax procedures. In order to put these 4 objectives into perspective, as far as the common people of this country are concerned, I believe, this exemption which everybody gets in 80C from investment, that should be enhanced to at least 5 lakh for each individual, because if you look at the total domestic investments in India, only about 8% comes from FIIs and FDIs. Absolutely. The rest, 92%, is household savings. So how the finance minister can, give a boost to domestic savings is by giving a tax benefit up to 5 lakh to begin with, which as of now is about 1.5 lakh. Another factor can be, right now we have the highest marginal tax rate of 30%, which is above 10 lakh. True. He should immediately make it 20 lakh, if not more, because if we compare our tax structure with China, then we are poles apart. So to minimize that gap, at least the highest bracket of 30% tax rate for individuals should be levied on above 20 lakh income.
Right.
Another factor which I believe, we just had a point on skilling. I personally think skilling cannot succeed in India unless we have an HDFC bank focusing on housing. We should have a bank which is focusing on education financing.
True.
Across the spectrum, let's say from schools, from colleges to professional education. This type of a bank can be financed by the existing financial institutions, and nowadays, if we look at the existing structure, there are a lot of non-performing assets arising out of educational loans.
Yes.
So how should we minimize that? In order to minimize that, we should link the degree which a person gets on the basis of an educational loan. That degree itself should be linked to the type of EMIs which this person is supposed to pay. And then the employer, like we have a tax deduction at source, we should have these educational EMIs deducted at source from the income by the employer. So these are some of the things which I believe will help address. And the last one I would say is, as of now, we have some 7-8 income tax forms of filing return. We could simplify by having only one form and separate annexures for each type of assessee. You fill in the same form, and if a particular set of annexure applies to you, you address it. Otherwise, you do not fill it.
I think the simplification has gone to a greater level when they actually introduces e-filing forms and all. So that is even more simpler too. But then, you panelists have covered major aspects. What exactly could be the aspects that could be crucial for the upcoming budget? It's time for us to slip into a break. But after the break, the floor will be open for these youngsters who are sitting on my right to shoot the questions to all those panelists. Let's take a short break. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
पेट्रोलियम पदार्थ सीमित हैं और जल्द ही खत्म हो जाने वाले हैं, इसीलिए इन दुर्लभ पदार्थ को बचाना ज़रूरी है। एलपीजी बचाने के लिए प्रेशर कुकर का इस्तेमाल करें। पीसीआरए द्वारा बताए गए साधारण टिप्स अपनाइए। आइए दोस्तों, हम ईंधन बचाएं और देश की प्रगति में हाथ बटाएं।
पीसीआरए का एंड्रॉइड ऐप डाउनलोड करें और एलपीजी बचत के उपाय जानें। पेट्रोलियम संरक्षण अनुसंधान संघ, भारत सरकार द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
उंगली थाम के जिसने चलना सिखाया, कड़ी मेहनत करके हमको पढ़ाया, हमारी खुशियों को अपनी खुशी बनाया, जिंदगी के हर सुख दुख में जो एक साया बनकर साथ रहे, ढलती उम्र में इन्हें अकेला ना छोड़ें। ध्यान रखें, माता पिता एवं वरिष्ठ नागरिक भरण पोषण एवं कल्याण अधिनियम 2007 के तहत माता पिता की देखभाल करना हमारा कर्तव्य है और उनको बेसहारा छोड़ना एक दंडनीय अपराध है। सामाजिक न्याय और अधिकारिता मंत्रालय, भारत सरकार द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
You think you've seen it all? Think again. Behind the silence of the deepest oceans lies the strength of a mighty force. A force whose bravest rise from the darkest depths when the world sleeps. Far away from city lights, proudly for the glory of white. Watch navies of the world united through oceans at the International Fleet Review at Visakhapatnam.
उंगली थाम के जिसने चलना सिखाया, कड़ी मेहनत करके हमको पढ़ाया, हमारी खुशियों को अपनी खुशी बनाया, जिंदगी के हर सुख दुख में जो एक साया बनकर साथ रहे, ढलती उम्र में इन्हें अकेला ना छोड़ें। ध्यान रखें, माता पिता एवं वरिष्ठ नागरिक भरण पोषण एवं कल्याण अधिनियम 2007 के तहत माता पिता की देखभाल करना हमारा कर्तव्य है और उनको बेसहारा छोड़ना एक दंडनीय अपराध है। सामाजिक न्याय और अधिकारिता मंत्रालय, भारत सरकार द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
Welcome back to the Sabka Budget Campus Special. Now, before the break, as I mentioned, the floor is open for these youngsters to actually ask their questions related to these aspects what we spoke about, the fiscal consolidation and the taxation part, investment, we spoke about employment, and we also spoke about the skill development factor. Now, let's open it, the questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Aman Bhardwaj. I'm again from the first year. My question is to Mr. Jitendra. Sir, we saw that China reached a Lewis turning point in 2010, after which factory owners started seeing a decrease in their return because of the reduction in the cheap labor. Now, with India currently focusing upon attracting foreign investments from other countries by leveraging their cheap labor, do you think India is also moving on the same path and maybe reaching a Lewis turning point in the upcoming years? So should we focus upon just increasing the quantity of cheap labor in the country, or should we also focus upon increasing the quality of that cheap labor by focusing some amount of our budget onto that part?
In China, the cost of the labor is increasing. So what happens, since we are talking of the manufacturing hub, wherein we are talking of making India to make India as one of the global manufacturing hub. So the point is that since the labor cost in China is increasing, so it's an excellent opportunity for India to reap this benefit. In fact, here we are not talking of cheap labor for our Indian workforce. We want to have a moderate, labor also in terms of whatever incentives they get. Because the point is that if we are able to improve the quality of life of our worker, the productivity of the workforce will improve, and definitely the profitability and the type of things we are going to see that will improve. So the focus is that we need to create a lot of jobs so that the industry becomes more labor intensive rather than capital intensive. And this can happen only if we are able to attract maximum, good manufacturers or global manufacturers to India. For example, latest we have seen yesterday only Boeing is going to invest in India. They're opening a manufacturing hub. Airbus has already started its operation. Samsung is also, thinking of having their manufacturing plant in India. So the point is, it's not about cheap labor or it's about something about the expensive labor. It is basically improving the productivity through productive workforce. And if, in fact, in the budget we are expecting that if some slew of measures can be given to industry also, if there is some incentivization, for example, if they are able to improve the employment by 2%, there can be additional income tax rebate on the industry also. So we are foreseeing that some sort of incentivization happens for the industry so that they're able to improve the quantity of the workforce in their own organization, and they are also able to improve the quality, and that quality can only improve if they are able to give good, incentives to the labor rather than going for the cheap labor.
Well, any other question? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. I am Rajeshwaran. I am from the second year of MBA. Ma'am, you are talking about the income tax slabs, and one of the radical proposals that has been doing the round these days regarding income tax is the talk that why not completely remove income taxes. And there is a lot of pros and cons that are being discussed regarding this particular move that is being proposed by some sections of the society. So could you please throw some light on this topic?
You know, if we look the worldwide demographics as far as the tax structure are concerned, there is taxation in one form or another in every part of the world. Having said that, we always believe there is that ideal level of taxation wherein government is able to raise the necessary resources, and at the same time people and corporations are motivated to work to the best of their abilities and to put the resources to their best possible use. If we really talk about something as radical as scrapping the entire tax system, I would not be in favor of such a solution. So I am not for complete avoidance, complete scrapping of the tax system. I am there for a rational, simplified, beneficial tax system.
Mr. Malla, you have something to say on that?
Yeah, essentially, what probably you wanted was, any organization or a country has to run for general good. So money must come. So one of the way and easiest way is the income tax. There could be other thing called expenditure tax. You do away with income, tax only the expenditure. Third could be wealth tax. Now, traditionally, most of the countries in the world have found income to be a good, place where you can tax it. The tax net should be widened, which is very important. And it is always better if there are more direct taxes than indirect taxes.
But Dr. Simrat Kaur, I just want to come back on the fiscal consolidation part from the taxation point of view. You've mentioned certain stats, but then taking the RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan's comments, and I quote, deviating from the fiscal consolidation path could push up government bond yields, both because of the greater volume of bonds to be financed and because of the potential loss of government credibility on future consolidation, I unquote. How are you looking at this? How do you analyze this fiscal consolidation situation? Everyone is debating on this. Are the factors really in support of the government?
Okay, see, when you are talking about fiscal consolidation, one thing is adhering to X% of GDP. But the question is, what is the composition of this particular fiscal deficit? Since you have the revenue and the expenditure side, you could, in order to meet your fiscal consolidation target, either increase your revenues, and to that we've already had the panelists talk about widening of the tax base.
Right.
Also, GST introduction itself is probably going to push up the GDP growth rate, and through that, even if the income tax rate remains the same, the revenue collections are going to be boosted. So we do have something positive on the revenue side coming up. What about the expenditure side? When we are talking about expenditure control in order to meet the fiscal consolidation, it is very important that expenditure needs to be controlled, not by reducing your revenue, your capital expenditure. Fortunately, the last year our capital expenditure has gone up as a percentage of GDP, and when we are talking about capital expenditure, it is the expenditure on infrastructure. And there are several studies which have empirically proved that GDP growth rate and a better infrastructure is very important. So to my mind, you have only three policies to work upon. One is revenue expansion to the extent possible, primarily through the GST. Expenditure control, but expenditure switching is probably much more important. And when we are talking about expenditure switching, it is from your consumption expenditure towards your investment expenditure, where primarily your infrastructure comes into the picture. The advantage of having a fiscal consolidation now is India is already in a good state. It has been quoted by the IMF, it is the brightest spot amongst the economies. So people are looking at India to give the push. But the push, from where is it going to come? It is going to come only from three areas, either the fiscal policy that is adopted, or the monetary policy, or the exchange rate policy.
Right.
And to my mind, what Raghuram Rajan says, consolidate your fiscal, have a fiscal space, rationalization of the subsidies, not necessarily cutting down, but yes, rationalization. And here we are talking about movement from subsidies in kind towards subsidies in cash, the direct cash benefit transfer. This is something we are eagerly looking forward to.
Now, it is time for us to slip into a short break. After the break, we'll be coming back and speak about the investment cycle. And the floor is still open. The people will be asking the questions over here on the investment point of view in this country. Let's take a short break. Stay tuned.
आ गया राजू बेटा, हम सब 10 फरवरी सुबह रेलगाड़ी से तुम्हारी मौसी के घर जाएंगे।
10 फरवरी को? पर उस दिन तो राष्ट्रीय कृमि मुक्ति दिवस है।
अरे हम सब 2 दिन के लिए तो जा रहे हैं।
राजू ठीक कह रहा है, उस दिन स्कूल में सब बच्चों को कृमि नियंत्रण की दवाई खिलाई जाएगी।
पर कृमि नियंत्रण करना क्या इतना जरूरी है?
हाँ, कृमि बच्चों के शरीर के लिए महत्वपूर्ण पोषक तत्वों को खा लेते हैं, जिससे बच्चे के शरीर में खून की कमी, कुपोषण और वृद्धि में रुकावट आती है, जिसके कारण बच्चे की सेहत, शिक्षा और कार्य क्षमता पर हानिकारक प्रभाव पड़ सकता है।
पर मेरी छोटी बेटी तो
1 से 5 वर्ष के बच्चों और स्कूल ना जाने वाले बच्चों को यह दवाई आंगनवाड़ी केंद्रों में खिलवाई जा सकती है। कृमि से छुटकारा,
सेहतमंद भविष्य हमारा। दीदी ये देखो।
H1N1 फ्लू को फैलने से रोका जा सकता है। खांसी और छींक के बाद और बच्चे को छूने से पहले अपने हाथों को साबुन से धोकर H1N1 फ्लू को फैलने से रोक सकते हैं।
इन्फेक्शन रोको, बनो हीरो। इलाज सिर्फ चुने हुए अस्पतालों में उपलब्ध।
उंगली थाम के जिसने चलना सिखाया, कड़ी मेहनत करके हमको पढ़ाया, हमारी खुशियों को अपनी खुशी बनाया, जिंदगी के हर सुख दुख में जो एक साया बनकर साथ रहे, ढलती उम्र में इन्हें अकेला ना छोड़ें। ध्यान रखें, माता पिता एवं वरिष्ठ नागरिक भरण पोषण एवं कल्याण अधिनियम 2007 के तहत माता पिता की देखभाल करना हमारा कर्तव्य है और उनको बेसहारा छोड़ना एक दंडनीय अपराध है। सामाजिक न्याय और अधिकारिता मंत्रालय, भारत सरकार द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
Welcome back to Sabka Budget Campus Special. We are in the Faculty of Management Studies, New Delhi. We have the students, we have the guests. Mr. Senthil Raj, my question to you, as I was mentioning right before the break, we're talking about the investments. When we link it to the employment, how feasible it is, what exactly are you looking forward in the budget from the investments point of view, linking it to the employment factor?
See, I mean, India has been one of the countries which are preferred investment destinations right now. But then yes, we need to make this environment a little more conducive, little more open, little more friendly to the investors, so that they are able to bring in more investment into the country. Yes, this is directly linked to our employment. I mean, more the investment, more the employment, and India has no dearth of young crowd or young entrepreneurs who are ready to start their businesses, generate more revenues. But yes, we need to make our investment systems more open, more friendlier, so that we are able to kind of overall add value to our current ecosystem that is there.
Right, absolutely. So investment becomes a crucial factor indeed. We talk about the public investments, we talk about the private investments. In fact, the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley is also mentioning about that. We have certain questions, we have many questions coming in. Please introduce yourself and then you can shoot your question to the guests.
My name is Sachin. So my question, though not directly related to investment, but it is related to investment. So we have seen there been a lot of focus and attention on the policy formulation and inaction front. So my question relates to the implementation. What sort of improvements are we suggesting or hoping for in this upcoming budget on the implementation front? Moreover, we have seen over the years a focus on the numbers. So there is a saying in the management, whatever gets measured gets managed. So we have seen that various organizations like Pratham and all have come up with surveys which shows a decline in the quality, though there is an improvement on the number front, like number of enrollments and all, but on the quality fronts there seems to be a decline. So how the upcoming budget is going to be different in that regard? How it is going to implement the objective of the outcome budgeting that we have been hearing about?
Right. Mr. Balla, I would like you to answer this question.
So, very brilliant question. Let me first come to the investment and what is happening on the ground level. What is more important is capital should flow either domestically or globally, and there should be entrepreneurs. I believe the way things are happening, and I'm predicting today that in 2025, the top 10 industrialists are not even born. So probably one of you could be top 10 in 2025 if you start thinking.
Well, absolutely.
It's possible. It has happened. Who knew Zuckerberg? Who knew Larry Page? No one knew. And if Zuckerberg can do things there, I am sure FMS boys and girls can do things here. Now, what a country can do, it can create a conducive environment. For example, private investment today is slow because people don't have equity. There are banks who are willing to lend for viable projects, but there has to be promoters' contribution, equity. Top groups in this country do not have that type of cash flow. But young, small businesses, there is a huge potential and things should happen in that space. But at a global level, if you have cared to see, the country is creating a national fund which is going to be called National Infrastructure Investment Fund.
Yes.
20,000 crore per year will be pumped there. Expectation is a similar amount will come globally. So this 40,000 crore worth of equity can easily get multiplied to something like 7 or 8 times. So about 3 lakh to 4 lakh crore will happen in just 1 to 2 years.
Right, Dr. Simrat Kaur, you want to add on that?
Yes, I appreciate the concern that very often the policies are wonderful at the paper level, but the moment they get implemented, that is where the problem lies.
Right.
We have over time, you've seen, moved from the strictly speaking Planning Commission to the Niti Aayog. But right now, what probably will work towards implementation is better governance. And to the extent our Digital India can digitalize most of the operations, transparency is certainly going to be enhanced. And that is one very important method for improving the effectiveness of a particular policy. For instance, when we talk about the subsidies being provided under the Food Security Act, and if you are linking it with your Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile, the JAM Trinity, so to say, obviously you are going to be more transparent with what is happening. Targeting is going to get more effective.
True.
And leakages are going to be curtailed. And this is what we are looking at, especially from the social safety network.
Dr. Monika Sinha, you want to have around that?
You know, I believe that there is a need to connect the dots in a country like India. And in November 2015, we saw a project in the form of Imprint India, which was launched, which is impacting research and innovation. So what basically is this project? You have this 10 IITs and the Indian Institute of Science, which are directly linked with the Prime Minister's office, so that if within an educational institution you have an innovation, then if it is really scalable, then you can take it to the commercial level without having bottlenecks in between. Because it is often felt that in developing countries, we may have had several innovations, but in the lack of the related architecture, we are not able to market them successfully. So in this budget also, I guess there would be emphasis on how to actually implement those schemes which are going to affect the quality of life of people. And connected to this is how do we bring in the unorganized sector within the mainstream businesses and education. In that, yes, the Mudra initiative is an initiative which has a lot of potential, but then we need several other initiatives in order to really tap the unorganized sector of this country.
When we are talking of Sabka budget, and as we know, we are following the paradigm of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, we are basically talking of inclusive growth. But as far as our economic growth is concerned, we see somewhat exclusion is there. So the point of concern is when we are talking of Sabka budget, we need to think of the last mile connectivity also. And this can only happen when if the corporate is able to integrate their CSR fund with some of the government schemes. In fact, there is a landmark achievement by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, though they have legalized the CSR spending, wherein the 2% of the profit has to go in the CSR budget depending on your capacity. So the point is that in education, whenever, like when we are talking of education, until and unless we are able to do vocationalization of education, it will not matter at all. Because if we see the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, it is somewhere close to 20%. So you are in that 20% lucky lot that you are pursuing higher education. But 80% people, they drop out after class 12. So who will take care of them? So the point is that if the budget can give some sort of, concessions for the CSR budget also, and also if there is a mandate that for at least, 4 to 5 years, the total CSR spend should be more on maybe a health, education and skill development. I am definitely going to see that whatever schemes we are going to pursue, they can only be successful if we are able to vocationalize our education system.
Well, now on that note, let's step into a short break. And after the break, we'll be once again directly going to the audience over here, the students who will be shooting the questions. Stay tuned, don't go anywhere.
उंगली थाम के जिसने चलना सिखाया, कड़ी मेहनत करके हमको पढ़ाया, हमारी खुशियों को अपनी खुशी बनाया, जिंदगी के हर सुख दुख में जो एक साया बनकर साथ रहे, ढलती उम्र में इन्हें अकेला ना छोड़ें। ध्यान रखें, माता पिता एवं वरिष्ठ नागरिक भरण पोषण एवं कल्याण अधिनियम 2007 के तहत माता पिता की देखभाल करना हमारा कर्तव्य है और उनको बेसहारा छोड़ना एक दंडनीय अपराध है। सामाजिक न्याय और अधिकारिता मंत्रालय, भारत सरकार द्वारा जनहित में जारी।
नीचे काकी, घर में शौचालय कहाँ है? बहू को घर में कहाँ, खुले में ही जाना पड़ेगा। फिर तो तुम घूंघट भी खोल ही दो। एक तरफ तो आपको बहू का घूंघट भी सरकाना गवारा नहीं, और दूसरी तरफ उसे खुले में। इस तरह तो हमने कभी सोचा ही नहीं था। तो अब सोचो, घर में शौचालय बनवाओ और इस्तेमाल करो।
स्वच्छ भारत मिशन, एक कदम स्वच्छता की ओर।
जहाँ सोच वहाँ शौचालय।
गर्भावस्था में सामान्य से 1/4 ज्यादा खाना खाना बहुत जरूरी है कमला, और साथ ही माँ का 10 से 12 किलो वजन बढ़ना भी बहुत जरूरी है। अगर वजन नहीं बढ़ता तो गर्भ में पल रहे बच्चे के मानसिक विकास पर बुरा असर पड़ सकता है। अब सुनो, खाने में क्या क्या खाना जरूरी होता है। हरी पत्तेदार सब्जियां जैसे पालक, मेथी, चौलाई, बथुआ वगैरह, और उसके साथ साथ लाल, पीले और नारंगी रंग के फल और सब्जियां जैसे गाजर, टमाटर, सीताफल और आम इन्हें खिला। और इसके साथ साथ दालें, मूंग की दाल, काला चना, राजमा, अरहर और साथ ही अंकुरित दालें खिला, जिनमें कई तरह के पोषक तत्व होते हैं। और साथ साथ ज्वार, बाजरा, गेहूं, रागी, जो कि आसानी से उपलब्ध होता है, तुम्हारे और तुम्हारे होने वाले बच्चे के लिए बहुत फायदेमंद है। आंवला, नींबू, संतरा, मौसमी, खासकर खाने के साथ, क्योंकि इनसे शरीर को बीमारी से लड़ने की ताकत मिलती है और खून की कमी भी दूर रहती है। संतुलित मात्रा में आयोडीन वाला नमक ही खिलाना, जो बच्चे का मानसिक विकास करता है। दिन में कम से कम 8 से 10 गिलास साफ पानी ये जरूर पिए, और अपने आसपास सफाई का वातावरण रखना है। और ये सब चीजें जैसे बीड़ी, सिगरेट, तंबाकू, शराब और किसी भी प्रकार की नशीली चीजों का इस्तेमाल न गर्भवती स्त्री और न ही घर में कोई और करे। और कमला के खाना खाने से 1 घंटा पहले और 1 घंटे बाद तक चाय का सेवन भी नहीं होगा। तुमको हर महीने इसे जांच के लिए यहाँ आंगनवाड़ी केंद्र में आशा एएनएम के पास लाना होगा।
बैटिंग तो अर्जुन कर रहा है, तो सब गोलू के लिए क्यों चीयर कर रहे हैं? वो तो घर पर बैठा है।
अरे तुम्हें नहीं पता, वो इसलिए नहीं आया ताकि हमें इन्फेक्शन ना हो।
H1N1 फ्लू को फैलने से रोका जा सकता है। बुखार के साथ खांसी और छींक होने पर सार्वजनिक जगहों से दूर रहकर H1N1 फ्लू को फैलने से रोक सकते हैं। इन्फेक्शन रोको, बनो हीरो। इलाज सिर्फ चुने हुए अस्पतालों में उपलब्ध।
Welcome back to Sabka Budget Campus Special. We are in the Faculty of Management Studies in the New Delhi. We have the students now asking the questions to the 5 panelists over here. Introduce yourself and shoot the question.
Recently, our finance minister spoke about disinvestment in a couple of sectors, and this he wants to do in order to promote public-private partnership. But do you think that at this point of time, with so much of market volatility, is it a good time to start working on this area right now? And if so, then can he take certain steps in this budget itself that will help him frame the policies ahead?
Disinvestment is one way of receiving revenues without any liability going up. This has been used very often in the union budgets, but obviously it was only post the new economic policy in 91. Prior to that, one could not ever think of disinvestment as a strategic tool towards improving the efficiency of the organization. Now, picking up on the disinvestment, maybe I'll link it with the historical perspective also. Internationally, it is well recognized that if you are trying to disinvest only for getting fiscal revenues, it is not necessarily the best way of doing so, especially if it happens to be a profit-making PSU, because the moment it gets disinvested, your sustainability and future dividends and profits have left the government and gone to the private sector. Also, when we look up the disinvestment scenario, barring your first year of 91-92, that was 1 year when we received actual realization which was much more than the targeted amount. Since then, very often in almost 80% of the years since then, the amount targeted, which we do at the time of setting up the fiscal targets, has been much lower than the actual realization. So there is a lot that needs to be done on getting the revenues through disinvestments, which have just been put up on the fiscal note. So disinvestment should be adopted, but for reasons other than getting the revenues. And also, when you have to have the fiscal targets met, disinvestment should ideally be adopted only when your stock markets, the stock exchanges are in a boom. And with the global economic meltdown, unfortunately, globally the stock markets are not doing well, but fortunately Indian stock markets are still performing well. So if you could stagger around your disinvestments, good policy to be adopted. It is a fiscal space which the governments can attain, provided you go about it in a transparent manner.
Well, absolutely, Dr. Simrat Kaur. In fact, you were talking about linking the disinvestment to the equity markets as well. We still remember Finance Minister saying that the real economy is driving the equity markets, and then disinvestment point of view, they clearly laid a roadmap how exactly it should be transparent enough from the budget. We'll be expecting that from the budget as well. Your question, please.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Jigar Goyal. Sir, my question is for Jitendra, sir, that McKinsey came out with the report that if we'll maintain the gender parity, then we can add up around $0.7 trillion in the GDP in the next 10 years. So what can we expect in this budget on these grounds?
The emphasis has to be on women empowerment, because if we go down the line, just go 50 kilometers outside Delhi, we know like what is the state of women here, right? The point of concern is that the gender balance can only be maintained if you are able to actually equate the occupational standards of male and female on the same par. Because normally what we see, like if you go in villages, if you go see any labor, the male labor gets more money than the female labor, right? So in fact, we are trying to, advocate that why not to have a parity, and also we are talking of having these certified laborers, because if male and female, they are certified labor, then immediately they are at par. Because going down the line, if you see the bottom of pyramid, until and unless there is a women empowerment at all levels, be it at the labor level, be it at the executive level, be it at the office level, be it at the academic level, the point is that this disparity will always remain. And since we know that we historically, what we have done, like in India, we have seen that women, they are always disempowered. But of late, we have seen a lot of, not lot of schemes by the government of India also, where women are getting lot of incentives, particularly in education sector, also in skill sectors. There are a lot of schemes also. For example, of late, we have apprenticeship Protsahan scheme, where half of the money is given by the government to the industry in order to promote this apprentice, and the focus is more on the female also. So the point is that gradually we can see that maybe in another 5 to 6 years down the line, we'll see that male and female workforce will be at par and there will be no gender disparity.
Right. Mr. Zenthildas, taking cues from that, if we talk about women workforce, in fact, there's only 30% of women are in the workforce. So what exactly should be the strategies to be adopted by the government, maybe from the budget point of view, to draw more women into the workforce?
See, this is a proven fact that wherever there's a balance of men and women working in the same space, there's always a better competition and there is always a better environment of working. This is something that we've experienced in our companies that we have worked in the past, or where we are, and in our organizations at least we make sure that that there is at least 40 to 50% or at least 40% plus we have women, and that has actually enhanced the performance of overall organization. Right. So there has to be steps that should be taken by the government in this particular budget to make sure that there are more and more women who are getting trained. When I say trained, it is, someone asked right at the beginning that it should be a quantity or it is a quality. We are in that kind of a situation right now, that kind of a market right now that the quality matters more. Definitely the quality matters more. I mean, can we really go about, getting our girls, our women in the country to, start enrolling more into the vocational training? Can we have better vocational trainings for women workforce? And there are a lot of other sectors which are kind of opening up, and we need to have these women getting trained and be part of the overall setup that is there, which is lacking right now. Yes, the way to go is women empowerment to whatever best way that can be done.
Well, indeed, as you're rightly mentioning about the women employment, indeed, I mean, these days we're seeing women coming out exceptionally well and then, coming into the workforce, but still 30% is a matter of concern. I hope that will be increased. As we're talking about women, let's take another lady over here to shoot the question.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Anjuman, a research scholar at FMS. My question is for Malla sir. Sir, in terms of taxation, what steps government should take to minimize the capital flight, the hot money which is going out of India?
Capital which is going out?
Yes, the capital flight, the hot money which is going out.
Okay. India is a part of global world, and if we have to get integrated, the flow has to be both ways. Few years back, there was a talk, when you talk of multinational corporations who have set up base in India, the thinking was, why not we have Indian MNCs which work globally? Partly it has happened. And if we want to work globally, the capital has to go out from India for establishing businesses. And similarly, now the only thing is, what is the net? And we just heard a figure that it's only 8 to 9% is the global flight of capital, whereas 92% is domestic. We would love Indian corporates to set up businesses all over the world. For that, capital is required. Now, only thing is whether that capital is a borrowed capital, their profits which are there, or there is a system in the country. For example, there is a bank called Export-Import Bank of India, which is supposed to provide equity type of help to the corporates who are setting up businesses abroad. According to me, we should not stop capital flight from India as long as it is going to create, because there is a difference between GDP and there is another term, gross domestic product and gross domestic income. You understand the difference? The product is what you produce in India, income is how much income is earned by, I'll really, one of the fallout, sir, of this budget should be that on 29th February, one is that you must listen the budget online when Honorable FM is speaking, but after that, I'm sure this college will have those 8 booklets, it have different colors, try to read it. It's a very interesting story, so that at the end of the day, you should know what is GDP, what is all terms. People don't understand what is fiscal deficit, what is revenue deficit and all that. So the net result of this program should be that on 1st March or so, you should be master of Indian budget. What are the terms, what are its implications? And from my own side, let me tell you, I have been watching budget, going to the Parliament House. It's a great thing. And that's how you become enlightened citizen. And you are already privileged that you have become part of FMS. And in order to become further privileged, please read the budget this time. It will be a very interesting story.
When we talk about the international crude oil prices have fallen, Dr. Simudkar, I want you to have an analysis on this. We have benefited from this falling crude oil prices in the Indian economy, but how exactly, from the budget point of view, should the government use this money from the, to accelerate the growth potential of the Indian economy?
See, fuel prices internationally, which was somewhere around above 160 a few years ago, have touched the $20s level. Nobody ever predicted that. It has become, and if you read up, they say is $20 the new $40.
Right.
How much low can we go? We still do not know. But there are positives and negatives. I will first speak from the global angle, come back to the national angle, and then probably ultimately wind up from the budget point of view. Globally, there are again positives and negatives associated with falling crude prices. The positive side is that obviously whosoever is a net importer of fuel stands to gain because fuel prices have gone down, and that gives them a lot of favorable approach in terms of your foreign exchange that is spent on fuel. However, when you look at it from the point of fuel exporting countries, it is like a sword because fallen your revenues. These are countries which are totally revenue based on the fuel. Their revenues are going to dwindle, and to that extent the economy's growth rate is also going to come down once your fuel is affected.
Right.
Secondly, we have also seen in the recent past that with falling crude oil prices, the investments in the crude sector have also dwindled.
Absolutely.
So tomorrow when the fuel prices go up and correspondingly the investments have not taken place, then what? So for today it is, yes, excess supply, advantages and disadvantages both. Probably the 20s level is something which is not a favorable level. Somewhere around 40s is what probably might be a better level.
Right.
Coming and demand is necessarily not picking up because most of the emerging economies are not doing so well, barring India, which is doing well. So now to India. India has its own companies also which are producing fuel. You have ONGC and others, the upstream companies. So the moment you are producing oil and you are selling it within India, you also have to sell it at a relatively lower price. Obviously, there is a pricing mechanism.
True.
India, fortunately, what has done, while with the falling fuel prices, India has not necessarily passed on the entire benefit to the consumer. What it has done is it has increased its taxation on the fuel. To that extent, whatever additional revenues have been garnered is going to be a positive. It is in fact going to be a lot of win-win from the union budget point of view.
True.
However, when there are companies which are the downstream companies which are buying and selling it and retailing it, the profitability would not get affected much because the prices at which they are selling have not necessarily changed so much.
Right. We're running out of time. 2 quick questions. Rishabh, you have a question.
Yeah. My question is to Mr. Senthil Raj. So, sir, we've been seeing that there's a lot of talk about Startup India and the kind of investment that is flowing in the services sector, because most of our startups are in that sector. How do you see, what are your expectations from the budget with respect to, higher value work coming to India? For example, product development instead of just back office work. So what are your expectations from the government to aid this shift?
Yeah, startup is the word right now, and so my expectation from government on this particular side would be that for any startup to succeed in the space that they are in, they need a lot of funds. We do have startup funds that are created, but what is the ease of tapping those funds? Can you really go and get the funds like right away? The answer is no. I mean, if you get into a bank, if you tell them that, no, I have a beautiful proposal, I want to get a fund, can I get the funds? The answer is, you will have to go around over and over again, make a convincing story, which takes a lot of time, lot of paperwork, very difficult to get the funds. But is there something that can be done where we can make a good incubation center kind in different areas with some funds, where we can have maybe experts from different areas who can judge and say that these are the startups that needs to be funded like immediately and the funds should be released. That's one big hindrance that is there. I mean, I personally, we as an organization, we personally fund a lot of startups every year. So this year we have a target of funding 5 startups. So, but this, we're doing in a private capacity, but then yes, government has to step in little more and make sure that the accessibility of these funds are easier. There's more information that's available, to get these funds easily. That's the key, and that has to be done right away. There's a lot of ideas that's coming in from everywhere. We meet youngsters every other day who have great ideas, who want funds, and we know the idea is going to work. But then how much that we can fund? We send them to different government organizations, different banks, but not all the time they're successful yet. This has to be, the overall system has to be eased out a little bit. So that's something that we expect, our union budget to kind of help us on that side.
Right, we have another question from the student.
Ma'am, with most of India's workforce being employed in the informal sector, they mostly have a hand-to-mouth existence, and the concept of savings is alien to them. So when this population gets older, it is going to be a tremendous strain on the Indian economy, like in case of Japan. So how are we planning to handle it?
A reflective question. Normally, I've seen most of the students talk about the demographic dividend. Is it a challenge or is it an opportunity? And you have rightly posed both these sides in the same statement. It is an opportunity, your demographic dividend, but at the same time, it is a challenge. If you look up the National Engineering Report in terms of employability, National Employability Report for the engineering students, estimates show that less than 20% of these engineers are employable. So if employability is a concern, to top it up is your employment elasticity, which means if your GDP is growing by 1%, at what rate is your employment growing? At an economic level, we have seen that the employment elasticity of output has reduced from 0.2 to 0.1. That means a 1% GDP growth is leading to only 0.1 increase in your employment. Obviously, there is a major problem, and to add to this is your dependency ratio. Demographic dividend means a bulge at somewhere around the center, which is your workforce. But the same workforce tomorrow is going to become dependent. And if you do not have a correct workforce, employability of the workforce, where the entire gamut of vocational training, skilling India, digitalizing India, everything comes into the picture. Make in India is also a move towards creating employment generation. But yes, future is going to be problematic because today's young population is going to become tomorrow's aged population. And we also know that population has a geometric growth path. So when you have large number of population in the working age group, you also have these people giving birth to a larger number of children. So we are still going to have so many entrants into the working age population.
Well, absolutely. We have another final question over here.
So my question is to Jitendra, sir. Sir, as we see that there is a huge shift from that we are planning from agriculture sector to manufacturing sector. That is what our focus is, and we are very optimistic about it. So, and when we are concerned about the agriculture sector as such, the yield per hectare is very low. And as this demographic dividend moves on to manufacturing sector, there is no improvement on agricultural front. So how about food security in India, and what can we expect from the budget regarding this in upcoming budget session?
See, the point is that what we have done, we immediately graduated from primary sector to tertiary sector, and we bypassed the secondary sector, which is the manufacturing sector. And in fact, China took a great advantage wherein they strengthened their manufacturing sector, and now they are leapfrogging to the service sector. So in fact, in this budget, we are thinking that if a lot of, some slew measures can be given to micro, small and medium enterprises, particularly in some terms of incentivization, and also if there is some redefinition of micro, small and medium enterprises, because basis on their, capital, basis on the ratio, they are given a definition. The point is that if you are able to improve on this definition, wherein you are able to improve their, capital, their output also, then accordingly the loan, the disbursement and all the banking schemes, they are going to help them. They are going to definitely make them a boost in terms of increasing the employability and also the productivity. Earlier session I said that there has to be a labor intensive industry. The shift should be from capital intensive to labor intensive, and once we have this shift, then definitely we will be having a big bulge of this manufacturing sector, and manufacturing sector is the game changer now, because we have somewhat consolidated in the service sector. Now there is a time that the focus has to be on the micro, small and medium enterprises, and if we are able to have more banks like SIDBI, like Mudra, there are a lot of schemes, but if you go to the ground, definitely there are a lot of problems. Particularly if there are no collateral, it's very difficult to get loans. Even in fact, there are no collaterals in skill scheme also for students, but once they go to banks, definitely there are a lot of issues. So if in this budget itself, we are able to get some sort of, schemes.
Right. Dr. Monika Sinha, your final comments to conclude the show.
I believe no country has been able to uplift a large segment of its population out of poverty without education, without focus on skill. And as Nani Palkiwala famously said, knowledge is the only factor of production which is not subject to law of diminishing returns. So I believe the projects such as Skill India, Digital India, Make in India, they are all gelling with the whole idea of uplifting India from poverty. However, they are yet to produce on the ground result. It is a long-term journey, but I believe it's on the right path.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Monika Sinha. Mr. Malla, thanks a lot for giving your time. Dr. Jatinder Singh, thank you very much. Dr. Smrit Kaur, thank you very much. And Mr. Senthil Raj, thank you very much. And last but not the least, thank you all over here for giving your time and participating. And you actually expressed your opinions. You actually asked certain questions which are more relevant for the union budget. In fact, that has actually energized. As in right in the beginning, I said, it is the energy of yours and the vision of those experience, the conglomeration actually gives a fillip to whatever we speak about the expectations of the union budget. Well, thank you very much, youngsters over here. So, well, that is the Sabka Budget Campus Special, and we are talking about the budget, which is not just an event, but it is something, a vision of the government, which would be laid emphasis in the course of the budget, in the course of the complete 1 year, which would actually lead to the economic growth of the country. Well, that's all on this show. Stay tuned to DD News for more other updates.